Picture this, a legendary creature, a bird of immense power from these ancient tales just soaring through the skies.
Hmm.
Now, try and connect that image to something, well, equally awe-inspiring dug up from the deep past,
Oh.
a brand new dinosaur predator from the Jurassic,
Yeah.
and it carries that same formidable name.
Ah, interesting.
Today, we're diving deep into the story of Alpkarakush, a recent and really exciting discovery from Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, and we've got some great stuff to work with here. Our main source is the scientific paper, the one that formally introduces Alpkarakush.
Right, the description.
Exactly. It details the whole discovery process and carefully places it in the dinosaur family tree.
I've also got a video.
Yes, a
Yeah.
really fascinating YouTube video. It gives you a proper sense of being there at the dig site, makes the whole thing feel much more real.
Cool.
So our mission today really is to understand what makes Alpkarakush significant. What does it tell us about life back in the Middle Jurassic?
The Middle Jurassic, right. That's roughly 174 to 163 million years ago. Quite a stretch of time.
It is, and Alpkarakush's bones, they were found specifically within the Balabansai Formation in Kyrgyzstan.
So even before we look at the fossils, we know it's tied to a very specific time and place.
Exactly. The fossils came out of the Urusai Valley near the town of Tashkumir in the Jalalabad Oblast.
Okay.
Paleontologists know the spot as the FTU-1 locality. But what's really interesting is how long this took. It wasn't just one dig.
Right. It unfolded over years.
Absolutely. It highlights the dedication involved, really.
It's quite a long history then. The first field work, the stuff that initially brought Alpkarakush to light, that was way back in 2005 and 2006.
That's right.
Wow, that's nearly 2 decades of work. And those early digs, they found 2 partial skeletons.
Yeah, 2 individuals right from the start. And that multi-stage effort, like you say, it just speaks volumes about the researchers' commitment.
It really does.
And it didn't stop there. Expeditions in 2014 found more material, then more work in 2016 and 2017.
Still going.
And get this, even in 2023, another team went back and found even more bits, including some really important things like teeth and isolated bones.
So that kind of sustained effort is really what's needed sometimes to build the full picture.
Often, yes. It's crucial.
And it's fascinating that we're talking about at least 2 dinosaurs. Does having multiple specimens, does that give a better sense of, say, variation in the species?
It certainly helps, yeah. For the holotype specimen, that's the main one used to define the species, we have a really substantial set of bones.
Like what specifically?
Well, bits of the skull, both postorbitals, those are behind the eye socket,
Okay.
and a quadritobigal, part of the jaw joint, plus several partial vertebrae from the back, all 5 sacral vertebrae from the hip region.
The whole sacrum. Nice.
Yeah, some ribs, a hand bone, and a claw, a good chunk of the pelvic girdle, and most of the hind limbs.
The legs, too.
Oh, yes. Femora thigh bones, tibia shin bones, the left fibula, ankle bones, another ankle bone, foot bones, a toe bone, and 2 toe claws. It's a pretty good haul.
That sounds incredibly valuable for understanding it. And the second individual, the paratype, what did those fossils show?
So the paratype, it represents a smaller animal. We have a partial pelvic girdle and the right tibia, the shin bone.
Ah, so noticeably smaller.
Yes, and that difference in size between the holotype and paratype, it raised some interesting questions about age and growth. We can get into that.
Okay, and you mentioned some other bits and pieces. Things found nearby, but maybe not definitively part of those 2 skeletons.
Yeah, exactly. At least 7 isolated teeth and a furcula, the wishbone.
The wishbone, right?
They were found in the same area. Now, they weren't directly connected to the main skeletons, but their location and how they look suggests they probably belonged to Alpkarakush.
But maybe not 100% certain, especially the teeth.
Well, the researchers flagged the teeth as more tentative, yeah. Needs a bit more investigation, maybe.
Got it. So all these prehistoric treasures, where are they kept now? Where are they being studied?
They're all safe and sound in the Institute of Geology's paleontological collection. That's part of the Kyrgyz National Academy of Sciences.
Right, so the local institution.
Exactly. That's where the detailed scientific work happened.
Which brings us to the main event, really. The official announcement, the description of this new dinosaur that was 2024 by Rauhut and the team.
That's the one. The scientific paper published by Rauhut et al. Formally established the new genus and species, Alpkarakush kungizicus.
And the name itself, Alpkarakush, That's quite something.
Isn't it just, it's brilliant.
It's from the Epic of Manus, which is just foundational for Kyrgyz culture, right? This mythical bird, supposed to be incredibly powerful.
Exactly. It's a fantastic way to link this ancient creature with the living culture of the region. Gives it this extra layer.
Absolutely. A deeper meaning.
It really does. And the specific name Kyrgyzicus, that's more straightforward, obviously referencing the discovery location in the Kyrgyz Republic.
So the full name, Alpkarakush Kyrgyzicus,
Hmm.
connects the dinosaur to the land and the legends. Beautiful.
Perfectly put.
All right. So we've covered the who, what, where, when of the discovery and naming. Now let's try and visualize this thing. What did Alpkarakush actually look like?
Okay, so based on its classification, it's a Metriacanthosaurid theropod. Now, theropod just means beast-footed, basically your typical two-legged, meat-eater dinosaur group.
Right.
Metriacanthosaurids specifically were generally pretty large predators. They tend to have a few key features, like a skull that's quite high and arched,
Okay, high skull.
and relatively slender hind limbs. Suggests they were probably quite agile, good hunters.
The paper also mentioned something really distinctive, a pronounced orbital brow. What's that?
Think of it like a bony ridge right above the eye socket.
Like an eyebrow ridge?
Sort of, yeah. In lots of theropods, this brow could be quite prominent, sometimes even decorative. For Alpkarakush, the paper specifically says it was especially apparent and rugose.
Apparent and rugose.
Yeah.
So very noticeable and rough. Bumpy.
Exactly. Rugose means it had a rough, uneven surface. Could have been for display, maybe shading the eye, maybe even strengthening the skull. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it definitely sounds like it gave the dinosaur a pretty distinctive, maybe even fierce look.
So a prominent bumpy eyebrow. That paints a picture. What about size? How big are we talking?
Based on the bones they found, the estimate is around 7 to 8 meters long.
Which is what, 23 to 26 feet?
Roughly, yeah. So a substantial size. Definitely a large carnivorous dinosaur, comparable to some other well-known Jurassic predators.
And looking closely at the bones themselves, that told us something about its life, its age. How did they figure that out?
That's right, bone histology. They take super thin slices of the femur, the thigh bone.
Like tree rings.
It's exactly like tree rings. You look at them under a microscope and you can see growth lines.
Wow.
So this allowed Rahut and the team to figure out that the bigger one, the holotype, was at least 17 years old when it died.
At least 17.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is the growth patterns suggested it was probably still growing, just more slowly, even at that age.
So it might have lived quite a long time, still getting bigger even as an adult.
Potentially, yeah. It tells us something about its life history, how it reached that large size.
How did that compare to the smaller one, the paratype?
Well, based on the size of its bones, the paratype was definitely much younger when it died.
A juvenile.
The researchers suggest probably a large juvenile or maybe a young subadult.
Okay.
Having that age difference between the two is really valuable for understanding how Alpkarakush grew up.
Okay, so we've got this picture emerging. Large, two-legged predator, distinctive bony brow, maybe living quite a while. How does it fit into the bigger picture? The grand scheme of dinosaur evolution. That's where classification comes in.
Exactly. The phylogenetic analyses, basically building the family tree that Rahut and his team did, aim to figure out Alpkarakush's spot.
Oh.
Their findings place it as a basal member of the Metriacanthosaurid clade, specifically within a subgroup called Metriacanthosaurini.
Okay, basal meaning.
In evolutionary terms, it means it's kind of an earlier branch within that specific group. Less derived, you could say.
And the paper included a cladogram, right?
Yeah.
One of those diagrams showing the relationships. Can you walk us through where Alpkarakush sits compared to some other big names?
Sure. So at the broadest level, Alpkarakush is a carnosaur. That's a huge group of meat-eating theropods.
Okay, bigger.
Within Carnosauria, it's part of Megalosauridae. Now, that superfamily includes families like Piatnitskysauridae, Megalosauridae, home of Megalosaurus itself,
The classic.
and Spinosauridae. Think Spinosaurus with the sail. So it's related to some pretty famous cousins already.
Right, so it's in that broad mix. Where does the branching happen next?
Okay, so further along the evolutionary tree, you get another major group, Allosauridae. That includes Allosaurus and its family, Allosauridae, and also the Carcharodontosauria, those giant killers like Carcharodontosaurus.
Right, the really huge ones.
But what's interesting here is that Alpkarakush and its close relatives, the Metriacanthosauridae family, they actually branched off before those allosaurids emerged.
Ah, so an earlier split within the Carnosaurs.
Exactly. And then within that Metriacanthosauridae family itself,
Yes. Where does Alpkarakush fit in there?
the cladogram shows some earlier branches like Schutosaurus and Yangtuanosaurus. Then you get the subfamily Metriacanthosaurini.
Okay.
And Alpkarakush is positioned as a basal member within that subfamily. According to this analysis, its closest relatives in there are Metriacanthosaurus itself and Samotyranus.
So it's part of a tighter, more closely related group within the bigger Metriacanthosaurid family.
You got it.
So this classification, it's not just about sticking a label on it. It really helps piece together the evolutionary story, who its relatives were, how these big predator groups spread out and changed during the Middle Jurassic. It's like finding a missing piece for that giant prehistoric puzzle.
Precisely. By placing Alpkarakush in this framework, we start to understand the features it shared with its relatives and the unique things about it. It adds really valuable data on how these large predators evolved and where they lived during a really crucial time in dinosaur history.
So let's wrap this up. We've journeyed to Kyrgyzstan, metaphorically speaking. We've learned about this new ancient predator, Alpkarakush, named after that powerful mythical bird.
Yeah.
Discovered it was this, 7 to 8 meter long meat eater with a striking bony brow roaming around in the Middle Jurassic.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen how its scientific classification slots it in as an early member of a really significant group of carnivores.
And let's not forget the amazing connection to Kyrgyz mythology. Naming it Alpkarakush wasn't just science, it was weaving this discovery into the cultural fabric of the region. Gives it a deeper resonance, I think.
It really does. And here's what gets my imagination going. Alpkarakush lived in the Middle Jurassic. Think about what other undiscovered predators might have shared that world. As paleontologists keep digging, how might future finds just completely reshape our picture of this period? It makes you wonder, what other magnificent, maybe even mythically named giants are still out there waiting.
It's a great thought. The discovery of Alpkarakush is just such a powerful reminder that our understanding of life's history is always evolving. Every new fossil changes the picture slightly.
Keeps things exciting.
Exactly. It encourages us all to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep connecting these incredible stories from the deep past with what we know today.